This program is about unsolved mysteries. Whenever possible, the actual family members and police officials have participated in recreating the events. What you are about to see is not a news broadcast.
Tonight on Unsolved Mysteries, 18-year-old Lisa Marie Kimmell was brutally stabbed in Casper, Wyoming. Yet for weeks after police believe she was murdered, hundreds of people across the western United States claimed they saw Lisa or her car. For over 100 years, fortune hunters have tried to find Arizona's Lost Dutchman mine, and many men have died trying. Today, the gold could be worth over $200 million. Also a story of love and murder in a remote Louisiana bayou. An illicit romance led to one man's death and a young woman's mysterious disappearance. From a murder discovered in the swamps of Louisiana to a treasure lost in an Arizona mountain range, our stories have one thing in common. As yet, there is no solution. Perhaps you can help. Join me. You may be able to help solve a mystery. On a little-used suspension bridge outside Casper, Wyoming, residents reported seeing unexplained lights in the early morning hours of March the 26th, 1988. Police theorized that an unknown assailant, operating under cover of darkness, brought his victim, a young girl of 18, to the bridge. After stabbing her repeatedly, he threw her into the chill waters of the North Platte River. The victim was later identified as Lisa Marie Kimmell from Billings, Montana. She had been sexually assaulted prior to being killed in a manner that suggested some kind of bizarre torture. The savage nature of Lisa's murder is not the only perplexing aspect of this case. Lisa was last seen alive on the night of March the 25th, and police believe that she was killed a few hours later in the early morning of March the 26th. But what complicates the investigation is that nearly 1,000 people claim they saw Lisa Marie Kimmell or her car during a week when police believe she was already dead. Lisa was 18 years old and worked as a manager at a fast food restaurant in Denver, Colorado. On March the 25th, she left town and headed for Cody, Wyoming to visit her boyfriend. Lisa's car, a black 1988 Honda CRX SI, carried the spunky license plate Lil Miss.
The plan was that she was supposed to leave Denver and sometime after work and get to Cody to see me sometime late that evening. I talked to her about 4:30, and she was going to be leaving in about a half hour. I thought she'd be in about midnight or something like that.
From Denver, Lisa had planned to travel to Casper, Wyoming on Interstate 25. From Casper, she would take a 2-lane road to Ed Jarrett's house in Cody. After spending the night there, she planned to go on to Billings, Montana to visit her parents. Weather conditions were good, so Lisa should have made the trip to Cody in 8 or 9 hours, arriving at Ed's house late Friday night. However, at 7 o'clock Saturday morning, she still had not arrived. Ed Jarrett frantically telephoned the highway patrols in 3 states. 2 days later, the Wyoming Highway Patrol reported that they had stopped Lisa for speeding about 60 miles south of Casper on March 25th, the night she disappeared. It was nearly 9 p.m. Friday night. 4 hours after Lisa had left Denver, she was right on schedule.
I was patrolling southbound on March 25th. noted a small car northbound at 88 miles an hour, according to my radar. I turned around and pursued the car. I stopped her near Orange Junction. Good evening, miss. May I see your driver's license, please? She was well kept, driving a nice car, kind of person you'd like to have for a daughter. Okay, Miss Kimmell, I had you on my radar back there at 88 miles an hour. Is there any particular reason for your speed?
I'm trying to hurry to Billings. I've got a friend who's going in for surgery.
This was the last confirmed sighting of Lisa. Her signature on the citation and a routine voice recording the policeman made verify that it was definitely Lisa Marie Kimmell who was stopped that night.
As the week went on, we realized the gravity of the situation. We knew that the outlook was looking a little grim, but even at that, even if the outcome wasn't as we hoped, we still needed to find her.
On April 2nd, 1 week after she disappeared, Greg Bradford, a mechanic who was spending his Saturday fishing, brought the search for Lisa Marie to a sad end.
And I came up to just about this spot right here, and I got a real bad feeling something was wrong. I felt that somebody died or somebody was hurt real bad. It just kept coming over me. I couldn't shake it. So I just stepped up. When I stepped up off the side of the bank, I looked over my shoulder and I saw the lady in the water. Now, I knew it was a lady in the water, but your mind tells you it's not true, you know, it's not real. And then I remember when we were driving up from Cheyenne, they said this young girl was missing from Montana. So I looked again and I said, oh my God, it must be her.
When we went out there, the physical description matched Lisa, but at that point, because of the condition of the body, we weren't sure until we'd gotten her out of the water. We're not sure at this point whether the body was placed in the river sometime on the 25th or the 26th. The body just didn't show any signs of decomposition because it was so cold. There were some stab wounds in the chest area. She was sexually assaulted. She was found nearly nude, but not quite. They made stab wounds in such a manner that we feel are unique, and I can't tell you how they were done to the body, but it would lead the appearance that somebody took their time in doing this. It's hard to understand why somebody would do something like that to another human being.
Police scouted the area where Lisa's body was discovered. On an old highway bridge, 1/4 of a mile away, they found blood which was the same type as Lisa Marie Kimmell's. Because the bridge is so inaccessible and so seldom used, police believe the murderer may be someone local. Based on the eyewitness accounts of unexplained lights on the bridge and an analysis of other evidence, police believe the time of Lisa's murder was the early morning of Saturday, March the 26th, approximately 5 hours after she was stopped for speeding. Strangely, in the next 7 days, hundreds of sightings of Lisa and her car, many of them involving an unknown male companion, were reported throughout the northwestern United States and Canada.
Up until this date, we've had over 1,000 sightings of this vehicle. A lot of them from law enforcement officers. There's no pattern to them. It's the unfortunate part. There's no direction of travel. They went south, they went to the north, they went to the west. They just were everywhere. And we were deluged with them at the point that we thought they had gone to Canada. We had some sightings in Canada.
Composites were made of at least 17 men, but none of them seemed to resemble one another closely enough to justify issuing a wanted poster. 3 of these sightings, believed to be among the most reliable, were reported on the 26th and 27th of March, after police believe Lisa Marie had already been murdered. One of them was in Casper, just 20 minutes drive away from the place her body was found. The other 2 sightings were in Buffalo, Wyoming, 2 hours drive outside Casper. In none of the 3 sightings did Lisa appear to be signaling for help. The Casper sighting occurred on Sunday, March the 27th, 2 days after Lisa had been stopped for speeding. Diana Houston was driving a van through the downtown area of Casper when she noticed the personalized Little Miss license plates because her roommate owned a puppy with the same name.
It was Sunday afternoon, about 1:45, and I saw a Montana license plate on a vehicle. And being from Montana, it caught my eye, so I looked, and the license plate said Little Miss. I went by, I saw somebody with blonde hair driving, and they had on a yellow sweater.
22 hours earlier, Donna Kirkpatrick, the county sheriff's wife in Buffalo, reported that she had seen Lisa wearing a pink sweater.
It was Saturday at noon, and I noticed a little black sports car had pulled out right in front of me. And then I noticed a license plate. It was a Montana license plate with Little Miss on it, Lilmiss. And at that point, I decided that I needed to see who was driving the car. I was most interested to see if the car went with whoever was driving it. I am absolutely positive there was a young gal driving it. I know the license plate. I know Montana license plates. I saw the plate on that car at that time on that day, and there's not a doubt in my mind.
Curiously, Lisa's parents are not sure that she ever owned either a yellow or a pink sweater. And the highway patrolman who stopped her for speeding, the last person to have verifiable evidence that he saw Lisa alive, remembers that she was wearing a black and white sweater. Could Lisa have changed her clothes? Or did the eyewitnesses see another young woman who resembled Lisa? 2 hours after Donna Kirkpatrick saw Lisa, another eyewitness also saw her in Buffalo. This time, a mysterious man was with Lisa.
I was busy at the register, but a car pulled up, and I said, Little Miss on the Montana license plates on the front of it, and there were 2 people in the vehicle. There was a very attractive young lady at the wheel. The individual that was with her was a small man, I would say 135 to 140 pounds. Dark hair, dark eyes, rather large eyes, and he had very fine features. It wasn't blunt-nosed or anything like that. They were aquiline, I think is the word that the poets use. And he was swarthy complected, and he was small. He fit into the car. He didn't look out of place or anything like that. And a few minutes later, when I turned and looked again, the car had gone.
If the 3 sightings of Lisa Marie Kimmell are reliable, they raise some disturbing questions. Was Lisa killed as the police think she was during the early morning hours of March the 26th? If she was, who was the woman seen driving Lisa's car in Casper and Buffalo? If Lisa was not killed on the 26th, why was she in Buffalo, more than 2 hours off the course of her planned journey? And if she was in jeopardy, why did she not signal for help when she was sighted? Next, the story of the legendary Lost Dutchman mine. The clues are scarce, but the stakes are high. Millions of dollars in gold. The Superstition Mountains in Arizona cover 160,000 acres of desolate, rugged terrain. According to legend, these mountains contain the richest deposits of gold in America, the Lost Dutchman's gold mine. There are hundreds of stories hinting at its location, and they're all tied to one man, a German prospector named Jacob Waltz, who is said to have discovered the mine in 1876. His nickname was the Dutchman.
Jacob Waltz was a student of mining, and he knew what he was doing. The old-timers were very, very astute to the fact of geology. They knew what they were looking for. If you're going to go out in these mountains anywhere and look for gold, you really want to go to places where gold has been found. Superstitions would be an exception. You wouldn't go in there.
Waltz was one of the few who was prepared to prospect in unpromising locations, and apparently he was rewarded. 15 years later, in 1891, when Jacob Waltz was 80 years old, he decided to hide his mine. He is said to have dug a hole 6 feet deep at the entrance to the mine. He then laid in 2 solid layers of ironwood logs, filled the hole with dirt, and topped it with stones from the surrounding area. The Dutchman bragged that you could drive a pack train over the entrance to the mine and never know it was there. For over 100 years, fortune hunters have searched for Jacob Waltz's hidden treasure trove.
Grandpa, it's me.
Julie. Several months after Waltz hid the mine, he contracted pneumonia and was taken to the home of a friend, Julia Thomas, in Phoenix. She tried to nurse Jacob back to health. Before Jacob Waltz died, he told them that there was gold from the mine stashed under his bed.
And he said, that's what I've been living on all these years. They took out the box, they opened it, and their comment was, my God, that's rich. It's got to be just a pocket. And he said, no, it isn't. He said, it's a vein. He said, there's enough in sight to make millionaires out of 20 men.
As his end drew near, the Dutchman gave Julia and Reinhard Petrasch, a local miner, clues to the location of the mine.
The old northwest corner of the Superstition Mountains. Take the trail in.
I left a number of clues, but several times he said, I've almost got to show you where it is, or you'll never find it, because you've got to know exactly where it is.
Waltz died before he could give them a map that showed exactly where the mine lay. Even though there are hundreds of maps in existence today, none of them came from Jacob Waltz. The only directions Julia and the Petrasch brothers had when they ventured into the mountains were the verbal clues Waltz had given on his deathbed.
He said, the setting sun shines into the entrance to my mine and glitters on the gold, so it must have faced to the west. He said, you take the first gorge on the south side from the west end of the range. He said that you can see Weaver's Needle to the south from above my mine. Julia and the Petrasches were so anxious to get in the mountains, they actually went in midsummer when the mountains were hotter than hell in a bucket. And it must have been a real ordeal for all of them.
They went in there for almost 5 weeks. They came out without any gold. And this was noted in the Arizona Republican in 1892. In fact, they called it the Queer Quest in search of gold.
Julia had invested everything she owned into this expedition, but she returned penniless. Julia Thomas never attempted to return to the Superstition Mountains again. Reinhard Petrasch was accused by his brother Herman of not paying attention at Jacob's bedside and writing the clues down incorrectly. They never spoke again. Reinhard continued to search sporadically over the next 50 years. When his eyesight began to fail, Reinhard realized he would never find the mine and took his own life. For over a century, treasure hunters have occasionally claimed that they have clues to Waltz's lost mine. A few of them may even have found it. But curiously, they all died before they could tell their tale.
When we return the story of Walt Gassler, who 5 years ago claimed he'd found the mine. On his last trip to the mountains, he lost his life before he could reveal the secret location. The Lost Dutchman's gold mine is one of the greatest living legends of the American Southwest. Some people say that it's just that, a legend. On the other hand, government studies indicate that there's a large quantity of gold located somewhere in the Superstitions. It is said that this matchbox was made from the high-grade ore that Jacob Waltz had in his possession when he died. The ore is so rich that if the mine were found today, it could be worth over $200 million.
Almost 100 years later, a modern-day treasure hunter claimed he had found the mine. His name was Walt Gassler, head chef at the Biltmore Hotel in Phoenix. Using clues handed down from Jacob's deathbed description, Gassler had spent most of his free time looking for the famous ore.
Bob Corbin, Walt.
Walt Gassler.
Nice to meet you. Have a seat.
Thank you.
When his health began to fail, he contacted two other prospectors.
Well, what you got?
One of them was Bob Corbin, the Attorney General of Arizona.
This is a map to the area where I have my camp.
He wanted to get together with me so that we could perhaps go with him and continue looking for the mine and with his directions after he had died. And he gave me his notes as well as a map as to where his camp was and where he believed the mine to be.
Now, that's a good location. It could be there.
2 months later, Gassler called Bob's partner, Tom Collenborn, a local historian. Gassler was excited and claimed that he had finally located the Dutchman's mine.
Walt Gassler called me on Sunday evening. He said, I'm going to the mine. I know exactly where it is. You and Corbin have to go.
I just can't possibly break away in the morning. I could if you just give me a little bit of notice. I'd sure want to go in with you.
He said, no, I can't wait any longer. I'm going to it.
I'll see you when I get back, but I'm leaving in the morning.
Walt Gassler was convinced that the mine existed from the clues that he had. Some of those clues he would not reveal. And the next morning, his wife took him out to the trailhead and dropped him off.
See you in 3 days.
Walt hiked alone into the superstitions, never to be seen alive again. 3 days later, he was found dead by ranch hand Don Shade. An autopsy proved he had died of a heart attack.
I don't have a license to talk like a coroner. I thought he was dead probably 2 to 3 days. He looked to me like a nice little old man that found a lovely place to give up the ghost.
Tom Collenborn?
Yes.
I'm Roland Gassler.
How you doing, Roland?
1 month after Walt's death, Tom Collenborn had a surprising visitor.
This man came over to my house, and he said he was Roland Gassler, Walt Gassler's son. And we were talking a few minutes. He says, well, you know, my dad found the Lost Dutchman in the superstitions. And he got out a piece of gold, showed it to me.
Boy, that stuff really looks good.
It looked very similar to the gold that allegedly came out of the Lost Dutchman mine.
Where'd this come from?
Came right straight out of my dad's backpack. Bob Corbin told me that you had a map that belonged to my dad. I wonder if you'd let me have that.
Well, I don't have the map anymore, Roland, but I do have your dad's manuscript.
Yes, that is my dad's.
Apparently, Walt really had found the lost mine, and his son Roland planned to use the map and notes to retrace his father's steps.
Well, I knew that you'd be interested, and I want to thank you for being cooperative on this.
All right.
We'll see you later.
Okay, bye.
2 months later, as Tom was finishing a slide lecture, he was approached by another stranger who claimed he was Roland Gassler, Walt's son.
Mr. Collenborn?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Roland Gassler. I've been wanting to meet you for a long time now.
Well, I've sure met several Roland Gasslers lately.
Well, Walt Gassler.
And I think my jaw dropped 10 foot to the ground because it wasn't the same guy. I said, I ought to ask you for a driver's license or something. I said, you're the second Roland Gassler I've run into in the last couple of months. Sure looks like you're Roland Gassler.
Yes, sir.
After meeting 2 Roland Gasslers, I wondered who was really Roland Gassler.
Who was the first man who claimed to be Roland Gassler? It appeared that he was an imposter who needed Walt's map so he could search for himself. But how had he gotten hold of the gold ore sample? When Walt died, the sheriff's report listed a backpack among Walt's belongings, but the real Roland Gassler never received it. Don Shade, the man who found Walt's body, also remembered seeing the backpack, and he said that there was a stranger in the area.
There was another man in the area at the time. When Tom Collenborn later gave us a description of the man that came to him and showed him some gold, it jibed up with the man that we saw in here.
Some believe that the fake Roland Gassler may have been in the mountains when Walt died and stolen the backpack with its precious ore.
I like to believe Walt found it. He spent so many years looking for it, and the last thing he would have done in his life before he died would have found the mine. I'd like to believe that.
When Jacob Waltz died, he left a trunk of ore, a list of clues, and a legend of lost treasure which has captured the dreams of 3 generations.
I have good reason to believe that the Dutchman's legend could be true. I've seen the ore that was under his bed when he died. I've seen the assay report on it at a jewelry store in Phoenix, which did exist at that time. And at today's gold prices, that ore would be worth over $2.2 million a ton. It's the richest gold ore I've ever seen in my life, and I've seen a lot of gold ore.
This could have been Gassler's trick in the trail because he went up here on Peter's Mission.
The Department of the Interior reclassified the Superstition Mountains as a federally owned wilderness area. And if the mine were found, all the gold would have to be surrendered to the government. But this does not deter Tom Collenborn and Bob Corbin. For them, the search for the Lost Dutchman mine is a fascinating mystery and a tradition that keeps alive one of the most enduring legends of the American Southwest. In a moment, the story of two lovers who met secretly deep in the swamps of Louisiana. 30 years ago, their illicit romance ended in murder. The Louisiana bayou country. Surrounded by humid swampland lies Lake Pontchartrain, just west of New Orleans. November 24th, 1956. At 9 a.m. on this chill Saturday morning, a local hunter and his young son unintentionally surprised a pair of lovebirds in an isolated area known as Frenier Beach.
What are they doing, Daddy?
Never you mind. Let's go.
The next morning, the two passed by the same spot and made a grisly discovery. The man they had surprised the day before lay dead of a gunshot wound in the front seat of the car. The woman was nowhere to be seen. The victim was identified as Thomas Hotard, a 46-year-old engineer from nearby La Plaza. Authorities later determined that the woman who had been with him the day before was 31-year-old Audrey Mote, a divorced mother of 3. She has not been seen for 32 years.
This was probably the largest case that ever hit the area. It was all over New Orleans. It was all over Baton Rouge. Everybody was talking about, and they all wanted to know, where's the woman? Where did she disappear? Why did she disappear? Did they kill her? Did they bury her body? Did they throw her in a lake?
3 months before this happened, my mother told my grandmother that if anything happens to me, take the kids and get as far away from here as possible. Why would a 31-year-old woman in 1956 in a environmentally crime-free area say this?
3 decades ago, the case of Thomas Hotard and Audrey Mote was one of the most publicized and sensational stories in modern Louisiana history. The case still provokes discussions among the old-timers in the area. Most of those involved in the initial investigation have since passed away, but the mystery of the incident at Frenier Beach has remained to baffle the next generation. The newspaper obituaries in 1956 described Thomas Hotard as a quiet, hard-working family man, active in the church and with the Boy Scouts. He worked for a local chemical company. It was here in 1952 that he met Audrey Mote. Audrey was a recently divorced mother, 15 years younger than Hotard. In addition to their work, the two shared an interest in scouting and were often seen together in town organizing their troops' activities.
My mother was a woman that was way ahead of her time. She was a single parent in '56, and she was the kind of woman that was very loving, very giving. Perhaps she was the best friend I ever had.
Even though Thomas was married, he and Audrey fell in love, but their romance was a deeply held secret. Audrey told her family that she had to work every Saturday, but it was a lie. For 2 years, Thomas Hotard kept the same schedule, telling his wife that he too was working on Saturdays. Unbeknownst to both their families, Hotard and Audrey spent these stolen days together.
Hey, how you doing?
Good now.
Where you been?
I remember we used to go on picnics together. He taught me how to develop film, was there on my birthdays. I thought they were friends. I didn't realize they were lovers. I found out later when I read the newspaper accounts, but I just thought they were friends.
On Saturday, November 25th, Thomas and Audrey met in the plaza around 7:30 a.m., then drove together to their secluded lover's lane at the edge of Lake Pontchartrain.
Sweet and slow, rock-a-bye me to and fro.
Ironically, that Saturday was Audrey's birthday. It was a special day that was to end in tragedy. Police later estimated that by morning's end, Thomas Hotard had been shot to death, and Audrey Mote had vanished, apparently forever.
Oh, honey, I know we can make it if we take it sweet and slow.
When the hunter made his grim discovery the next morning, he went straight to Percy Hebert, the sheriff of St. John the Baptist Parish. Hebert was the first to arrive at the scene. Hotard had been killed by a single shot from a 16-gauge shotgun fired at point-blank range through a side window. At first, Sheriff Hebert thought that the missing woman had probably killed Hotard in a lover's spat. However, once he began to investigate the crime scene, he made some unusual discoveries. Scattered on the ground were the partial contents of a woman's purse. Inside the car, he found the car key still in the ignition and women's clothes crumpled on the floorboard.
From the articles of clothing that were found in the car, the only thing she could have been wearing was a bra and a slip. Her sweater, her underwear, her stockings, her shoes, skirt, all of that was in the car. The car had the bed made down in it. In other words, it was one of those old Nashes that had a bed that could be folded down. The evidence indicates that they were probably in the act of making love when the murder occurred.
It appeared that the woman had tried to flee, spilling the contents of her purse in the process. 50 yards from Hotard's car, Hebert found a pair of footprints made by small bare feet, probably Audrey's. Just behind them was the print of a man's heavy boot. 5 feet away was an area where it appeared a scuffle had taken place, and a set of car keys was discovered. There was no other physical evidence and no indication that the murderer had an accomplice. Significantly, the woman's purse itself was never found. It was not until 10 hours later that the authorities decided the missing woman definitely was Audrey Mote. At 7:30 that same Saturday night, Sheriff Hebert found Audrey's car parked next to the cafe where she had met Hotard. The keys found at the crime scene fit the ignition. In a box on the back seat, he found the verses of a song from a musical, The King and I, handwritten by Audrey on a small file card. It read like an obituary for her secret, lost love affair.
We kiss in the shadows. We hide from the moon. Our meetings are few and over too soon. We speak in a whisper, afraid to be heard. When people are near, we speak not a word.
This was quite a scandal. It was quite a shock for this sleepy little town of La Crosse back in 1956. Everybody was buzzing, was talking about it. They all had their own theory of what happened. They all had idea of who could have committed the murder. They all had an idea of where Audrey Mote was, and they all wanted to help the sheriff because they saw a woman answering that description going door to door, and all kinds of confusion. Believe me, confusion reigned supreme about that time.
On December 6th, 2 weeks after the disappearance, Audrey's former mother-in-law received a strange phone call. Perhaps Audrey was still alive.
Hello?
Mom?
Audrey?
Mom, I'm in trouble.
Audrey, is that you?
I need help.
Audrey? Audrey? Audrey?
Then a waitress in New Orleans reported that she had seen Audrey in her restaurant around the same time that Mrs. Mote received the phone call.
Will there be anything else, hon?
No.
The waitress said she recognized Audrey from seeing her picture in the paper. Audrey appeared to be very tired and her clothes were shabby. Audrey then left the restaurant when she realized the waitress was watching her. This was the last reported sighting of Audrey Mote.
I couldn't let myself believe she was gone. I kept thinking she'd walk through the door. couldn't relate to Mr. Hotard being dead at all. That didn't register. But my mother not coming back, I thought everybody was lying to me. I just couldn't accept it.
As the years went by, the sensational story slipped slowly from the headlines and eventually disappeared from the newspapers. The murder of Thomas Hotard and the disappearance of Audrey Mote soon became an obscure footnote in Louisiana folklore, until the case was suddenly revived more than 20 years later. In 1980, a sick and ailing old man told his family that he knew what happened to Audrey Mote.
Do you remember that Hotard fellow what got killed in the swamp? And the big search for everybody looking around never did find out who killed him? And that Mote woman, what they never found? But ain't nothing in that swamp goes on, but I don't know.
Several months before he died, Ernest Acosta made a startling confession. He claimed that his common-law wife at the time, Caroline Slesher, had murdered both Thomas Hotard and Audrey Mote, and that he had helped her dispose of the bodies. Caroline died in 1979.
And it was Caroline what shot both those two.
Acosta and Slesher lived on the edge of the swamp, less than a mile from the Frenier Beach murder site. Both had surly reputations, and Acosta was known to sit in his front yard and take pot shots at any passers-by that strayed too close to the house.
My father was a very mean person. He had no respect for nobody. And if you would come up to him and ask him anything, he wouldn't answer you. He would grab the gun, show it to you, and then tell you what the hell you want. And then if he didn't like what you wanted or what you said, he would tell you, hit the road, Jack. Caroline was in the same manner. She slept with a gun underneath her pillow at all times. And she was another person that the gun would come first. She would ask questions later.
Because next week, I don't want them kids here. I don't want them around. I don't want them underfoot.
You don't want them kids here next week?
No, I don't want them.
They were the perfect pair. They were two of a kind. And they loved guns.
Marville Corona claims to know of at least 2 occasions when Hotard and Audrey came to the house. Both times, they apparently argued with Caroline, but no one knows why.
My father said that they knew something about Mrs. Caroline Slusher.
What you want here, Hotard?
We don't want any trouble. What they knew, I do not know.
We ain't got nothing to talk about, boy.
Miss Caroline,
but according to him, Mrs. Mote was related to Mrs. Slusher, some kind of way.
All right, make sure this is the last time, boy. Come on. And you better watch your manners. And don't talk that trash talk in my house.
The night before the body was found, Marville says her father was away visiting his children. Apparently, Caroline phoned him, and he rushed home. Acosta told his daughter that both Hotard and Mote had actually been killed by Caroline in the house. He claimed that he and a neighbor carried Hotard's body back to Frenier Beach and placed it in the car. They then tied Audrey's body to an old Civil War cannon and dumped it in the swamp.
I told him, I said, Daddy, how could you all have killed Mrs. Mote and Mr. Hotard? Because Mr. Hotard was killed in the car. He said, believe what you want to believe. I'm telling you what happened.
I brought Miss Corona to the sheriff's office, and she was given a lie detector test on everything that she said, and she passed it. It said that she was telling the truth.
Wayne Norwood joined the sheriff's department at St. John the Baptist Parish in 1983. He heard about the Hotard Mote case and became intrigued by it. For the past 5 years, he's conducted an unofficial investigation on his own time.
Right on the other side of the track, right at the edge of the swamp, is where the old Acosta house used to be. And according to Miss Marvell, about where you see the big cypress stump is about where the cannon used to set. And we hope to go back in there a little later on when the water goes down and do some more diving. Hopefully we'll find something then.
Wayne Norwood is convinced Audrey's body was indeed thrown into the swamp tied to a cannon, and he has combed the area with a metal detector. But he believes Acosta may have warped the truth when he told his daughter the other crucial details of that night.
Mr. Acosta said that his wife had actually done the killing and that he had helped hide the body, but this is one of the things that I disagree with. I think that this was his way of telling what had happened, but not letting the kids know that he actually did the murder, just relieving his conscience. I think this was his way of doing it. I would imagine, since he watched the area back there real close and he run hunters off all the time, that he had to know what was going on, because the people had seen this automobile and a man and woman parked back there every Saturday, just like clockwork. My theory is that he had been watching them, and this particular time that he was watching them and probably got excited, and I think it was a sex crime.
It had to be sheer panic. It had to be intense fear. I mean, to watch your lover get his head blown off, and then fear for your own life, I'm sure.
He only lived about a mile from the murder scene. There were no tire marks, according to the investigation. And he only had to take her about a mile to the house. So this would be why there was no tracks and a quick disappearance.
The scene of the crime has changed considerably since that tragic Saturday morning in 1956. The actual spot where Thomas Hotard died is now 100 yards offshore, reclaimed by the waters of Lake Pontchartrain. And Audrey Mote, her fate remains a mystery hidden in the murky swamp surrounding the lake.
I think it's always going to be in the back of my mind, in my heart, to want to know what happened. I hope that whatever happened, that it was quick, that she didn't suffer, that she wasn't put through a lot. But I need to know.
For every mystery, there is someone somewhere who knows the truth. Perhaps that someone was watching. Perhaps it's you.